call the meeting to order.
I think you got all wet, Mary. I think your whole Mary got wet.
Oh, maybe we need a new one. I think they had a leaky pitcher, so she went to get something to clean it up.
Somebody spilled something.
I think our picture leaked.
Call the meeting to order. Roll call for pledge, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Okay, thank you. Announcements of the chair. I just would like to, as we get together to go over the budget tonight, I'd just like to thank everybody for their work in the committees. And I attended all the committee meetings, and I was really pleased with the questions and the analysis of the budget by the committees. So thank you for your diligent work on that. At this time, we'll open the floor up to citizens' comments. Anybody wishing to speak? Anybody wishing to speak? State your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carol Gonzalez, and I live at 5526 53rd Avenue in Kenosha. As a taxpayer and an employee of the county, I'm just here to bring up the issue again of the jail staff being treated unfairly and inequitably regarding their holiday pay. I know I haven't been at a lot of the committee meetings, just because I take care of an elderly mother, but regardless, you had all the information, you know the facts. There are jail staff that do receive paid holidays, certain booking clerks, certain correctional officers, DSOs that receive them, but the rest of them do not, and I think it's very discriminatory that all of them are not receiving it. I don't understand it, and I'm here on their behalf because they're afraid of retaliation, and it does happen. They are, if they speak out, they get chastised either by a personal telephone call or they get put in an undesirable work area for very long periods of time. And so they're afraid to come and speak. I think it's unfair, and you guys have had the information for quite some time, and I'm very disappointed that nothing has been done about it. And the other thing I wanted to mention was I'm really disappointed that our people are being told that we are not a union. We are a union. We've been a union in this county for 30 years, and we're not going anywhere anytime soon. And I think it's very disrespectful for people to tell us that we are not here, because we are here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing nobody, citizens' comments are closed. At this time, we'll move on to supervisor reports. Seeing none, we will continue with the agenda.
Policy resolution, second reading, from Finance Administration Committee regarding 2014 Kenosha County budget.
Supervisor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members. On behalf of the Finance Committee, I would move the resolution for adoption of the 2014 Kenosha County budget.
Second.
It's Been moved and seconded. Supervisor Rose, you still have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. Last night, we talked about many of the financial provisions in the budget, and it's our position that the budget is a very conservative budget with a levy increase of 1.85%. I would also like to focus my attention this evening on probably what seems to be one of the more controversial provisions. I don't think it should be one of the controversial positions, but it seems to be, and I would direct your attention to page 6 of the budget resolution, and focus the attention to that which says that the county board that the county board shall approve prior to acquisition of capital outlay, $5,000 or greater, outlay which is funded with drug forfeiture funds. Budget amendments funded with drug forfeiture funds shall not supplant the county budget and shall not anticipate the receipt of said drug forfeiture funds. This shall not apply to expenditures made from this fund for other participating governments in this program, in other words, the city of Kenosha. This provision was placed in the budget to stem a practice which probably should have been dealt with by this board some number of years ago. Perhaps it was an oversight on the county board's part. Perhaps it was one which should have been submitted to the county board for its consideration by one of the other sheriffs, but at any rate, it was not. But just because the history and practice for allowing the sheriff to purchase capital outlay of $5,000 or more without county board approval does not mean that this board should sustain that practice or let it go forward. As part of our governance authority, as part of the idea of a tripartite system of government, a legislative, a judiciary, and an executive, a checks and balance system, we as a board obviously approve the policies and decisions made by our administration, by those who are elected and those who are appointed. This provision in the budget resolution is entirely consistent with the constitutional idea that we as a legislature give our advice and consent to those kinds of major purchases. Why 5,000? Because 5,000 is that which all other administrators, be it the county executive, the finance director, the district attorney, the treasurer, the county clerk, or anyone else who presents proposals to us, presents a proposal for any kind of capital outlay of $5,000 or more. This provision in the resolution certainly contemplates that we would not be supplanting items which would be our responsibility in any event. For example, if there were vehicles in the budget that we have purchased in the past and we need to replace that vehicle, we could not supplant the county budget and shirk our standard responsibility by saying, well, this money is there from the drug forfeiture money and we'll buy the vehicles this time with that money. That isn't what this is all about. There are certain regulations that have to be followed. I have those regulations, and I think they have been distributed to most members of the county board. I know that the finance committee did review them, and they were there for anybody else's review as well. Those rules contemplate that the governing board of the county or city receiving the funds would approve of the expenditure of those funds. This is, again, it's just part of our check and balance system. Nobody is saying, and let me underscore that, nobody is saying that the sheriff has engaged in any wrongdoing by this common practice, which he did not start, but somebody else did, of expenditures of money on capital outlay. This is not also a commonplace thing. It's not like this sheriff or any other sheriff has spent many dollars on capital outlay. But when a sheriff does, I think it's our responsibility as the governing board to make the decision, do we or don't we want that particular item? And do we or don't, is it in compliance with the federal rules? This board doesn't have a history of running afoul of either state or federal rules, so I'm not concerned or worried that somehow this board will disregard those federal rules if there is some future proposal to approve a capital outlay on $5,000 or more. Again, all we seek is to conform the sheriff's responsibilities to seek approval of capital items in excess of $5,000 with the drug forfeiture funds, just as he does with any other funds. There has been some concern that perhaps $5,000 is too low. $5,000 is the figure that has been the commonplace practice and by the executive, by all of the other elected officials, and that's the figure that we have placed in the budget. But I'm certainly understand that this is a change in practice. I'm willing to change that $5,000 figure to $10,000 if the board is of the mind that $10,000 is a better figure than $5,000. But I don't think under any circumstances we should disregard our responsibility. We should not delegate that responsibility to someone else. If we are about to do that, we might as well stay home and call in our vote. This is not what we have been elected to do. We've been elected to make the difficult decisions. I think this is what the general public expects of us and what we're merely doing this evening in offering this new provision in the resolution is to bring the Sheriff's Department fully in conformity with all of the other practices that he engages in when he makes other capital outlay. This whole budget this evening is filled with capital outlay in excess of $5,000. Nobody has even suggested that any administrator should have been allowed to purchase any of those capital outlay items without board approval. So I seek your approval this evening for that provision on behalf of the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Vice Chairman Kubicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of the budget highlights that I gathered during this process is this is the smallest increase in the county budget over the last 25 years, except for the zero budget in 2013. It includes a $250,000 for CABA High Impact Fund and an additional $250,000 if other economic opportunities arise. This will help keep the momentum of attracting high-quality companies to Kenosha County. Kenosha County Administration Restoration is going to be happening next year. That's this building right here with the waterproofing of the basement and the tuck pointing also. Joint Services Software will begin the implementation, the new public safety software in 2014, and me being involved in public safety for the past 27 years, think it's a very important tool to get implemented as soon as possible. The budget provides for infrastructure for outdoor Wi-Fi network from 35th Street to the north to Anderson Arts Center to the south. It will encompass the downtown businesses, parks, and harbor areas, a big plus to Kenosha County. The county will complete the review of county compensation for implementation in the 2015 budget. Getting down to the nuts and cents here, most employees will see a modest increase of 25 cents per hour on June 30th for the first wage increase in many years. In addition, Brookside employees will receive an additional 11 cents per hour, and the jailers, with the work of the sheriff, county executive, and county board, will receive an additional 13 cents an hour on January 1st. This budget was accomplished by the county executive and his staff, the finance division and their staff, the department heads and their staff, and all of us working together to provide the citizens with a solid budget with keeping an eye on Kenosha County poised to continue development across our county. I would also like to thank the Finance and Administration Committee for all their hard work during this process. Chairman Rose, Supervisor Ron Frederick, Supervisor Mark Molinaro Jr., Supervisor John O'Day, Supervisor Doc Grady, and last but not least, Aaron Kohlmeyer. A little story about Aaron Kohlmeyer. His wife gave birth to their third child on October 28th in the morning of that day, and that night, Aaron came out and to complete the process of the budget hearings that evening. I call that dedication. Kudos to you. Kudos to your wife for letting you come out. I don't know if you got out of changing diapers or what, but I'll let you guys be the judge. In closing, I'd like to say this. The Finance and Administration Committee reviewed the budget and unanimously approved it, and I recommend your approval this evening. Thank you.
Supervisor Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I want to thank administration and the Finance Committee for all their hard work that they have done with the budget. I'd just like to touch on what Supervisor Rose had previously spoke on in regards to the forfeiture funds in regards to the Sheriff's Department. That being my committee at this time, I don't really believe this language should, I believe this language should be eliminated as it just adds an extra layer of bureaucracy to the program that is running very well and obtaining good results. In my view, there's no real good reason to have the sheriff jump through hoops to spend money that the federal government is sharing with the law enforcement to fight and find drug crimes and illegal drug use. With that being said, I'd like to make a motion to amend the budget resolution by completely eliminating the sixth full paragraph on page 6, dealing with requiring a budget amendment by the county board every time a $5,000 capital outlay is funded with drug forfeiture funds. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? It's been seconded by Supervisor Skalitsky. Anything else on that motion, Supervisor
Yes, I'd like to
Esposito?
elaborate on that. I can see Supervisor Rose's point of view on some of these issues. I again had looked through the Guide to Equitable Sharing for state and local law enforcement agencies. In regards to this fund, this is not a tax levy dollar and is not budgeted dollars. This is a federal program that shares local law enforcement agencies and task force units money seized and lawfully forfeited from drug crimes. It is shared by the DOJ with the agencies that did the work to investigate and uncover these crimes. This fund is, if we're talking about it being, for lack of better words, audited or reviewed, it's done by the DOJ and the federal government. So I just don't really think that this is a county board issue. I believe the county board is best at managing the budget and long-term range goals for Kenosha County. This particular paragraph does not belong in our budget. It is an attempt to micromanage a task force that is already performing very well. I ask your support for this amendment, and if I could, through the chair, if I could have one of the Sheriff Beth or Chief Deputy just talk a little bit and comment about the task force and the forfeitures and how well KDOG unit is working and how much drugs were removed from the streets of Kenosha County in the past few years.
Sheriff Beth? Sure. I was so intent on listening to you, I forgot. I apologize.
I think this is the time for the board to make the decision. The public hearing at this meeting yesterday, the committee meetings, is the time for that kind of input from the general public or administrators. This is not the time for the agency head to make a pitch to this board. So I would object to that, and I don't think that the rules provide for it.
Is there an issue with staff coming up and making a comment? Okay. I don't consider this part of a public hearing. I believe that somebody from the board is asking the staff a question, and I'll allow it. So
Well,
if you would-
it's not a question. And the issue of...
He asked him, Supervisor Rose, he asked him to give him information on the success or failure of a unit of his operation.
I would say that is irrelevant. The issue has to do with a very narrow issue of seeking board approval for $5,000 or more. We don't need a discussion or consideration of the effectiveness of the unit, their work, or those kinds of ideas. I think that that's a issue that if it's some committee wants to listen to that, that's fine. That's not the issue before us. And I don't think that we should be sidetracked on irrelevancies like that. So I think that it needs to be ruled out of order.
Sure. What is it?
I'd like to hear the sheriff speak to the process. This would be a change to the sheriff's process. It would affect the process. I think that is relevant.
Somebody has to speak into the mic so listeners can hear what's going on.
Go ahead.
Point of information, I would like to hear the sheriff speak to the process. This would be a change to the process. I would like to hear how he would incorporate, or why it should not be incorporated.
No.
All right, enough of this. Answer the question, Sheriff.
Supervisor Esposito, could you please ask me the question one more time?
I would just like you to comment on the task force source of forfeitures, how well the KDOG unit is working. Give us some idea, since this is going to change potentially your process of doing things, how this would affect this task force going forward, and in the past years, how successful has this been, and how many drugs have been taking off the streets because of this task force, please?
A real quick summary of what KDOG has done. And KDOG is a task force of all the agencies in Kenosha County. The two major players are the Sheriff's Department and the City Police Department. We are the only ones that currently have people on board in the unit right now. Most of the issues that are dealt with in the city of Kenosha, and they also work with the gang unit as well. And from 2011 to current, the KDOG has taken off the streets about 509 pounds of marijuana for a street value of $1.5 million, almost 2 pounds of cocaine for $82,000, 3/4 of a pound of heroin for about $30,000, a half pound of crack cocaine for $10,000, and about 1,100 marijuana plants. A total of about $1.6 million the KDOG has taken off the streets in the last 2 years. So they've been very successful. This unit is looked over and supervised by the Sheriff's Department in conjunction with the City Police Department. The Chief of Police and I meet on KDOG and discuss it with our supervisors and unit on a very regular basis. We get updates on a weekly basis from the KDOG supervisors. And part of the issue with what is being proposed here is our KDOG unit. Drug trafficking doesn't happen on a schedule. They go out at all different times. They go out, and sometimes their cars get identified by the drug dealers, and they have to swap them out on a pretty regular basis sometimes. They also need money for drug buys, and sometimes those drug buys are tens, 20s, thousands of dollars, and we can't schedule to come to different meetings to get approval for expenditures of $20,000 or $30,000 that we need to make the drug unit work. Our drug unit is very successful. They've collected several hundreds of thousands of dollars the last few years, and the chief of police and I, for many years, that money has been $10,000, $20,000. And it's climbed. They've been successful the last couple of years. They've had a couple of big drug busts, and the chief and I, you know, part of what I'm hearing of this is the oversight of these funds. The chief and I are very cognizant of taxpayers. This money isn't tax money, though, and we're also elected. I'm elected, but he's also cognizant. He's very aware of how funds work, and we don't spend frivolously. We are very frugal in what we do, and the fact that these funds actually built up to a point that we could replace a 1970s armored personnel carrier that we got from the military and save up to the point that we could replace that with a brand new vehicle for all the people that live inside Kenosha County. I'm not going to use the old term public safety. It's our officers' safety. As they travel to a call, they're in a vehicle that makes them safe. It's not a bad thing. I don't feel sad or embarrassed. I'm very proud of the fact that our drug unit was able to do that because that vehicle goes out and protects the officers that actually break the doors down and do these drug raids. So I don't know if I answered your question completely.
Thank you, Sheriff. You still have the floor, Supervisor Esposito.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, let's be clear. This fund is audited and scrutinized, and you have to follow certain parameters to be able to participate in this whole KDOG unit and this whole law enforcement task force agency equitable sharing program. So I just don't feel that the county board needs to get involved at this level when everything is above board, and if there was no checks and balances, as Supervisor Rose had stated, I could agree with that. But there's checks and balances at every turn regarding this fund. Thank you.
Supervisor Esposito. Supervisor Dodge.
Yes, I was involved in this from the beginning. Caused a lot of problems, but at a meeting with the sheriff and Corporation Counsel and a number of other people, Corporation Counsel gave us a report, and it said that was Federal Equitable Sharing Forfeiture Fund Analysis Report, dated 10/7/13. In there it said, discussion with Ann Isley, Department of Justice, Dave Gersten, Nancy Ortis, and Catherine Andrea. And there it said, Ms. Inslee stated, and this is a quote, that the Department of Justice prefers that there is collaboration with the county government as to the use of the funds. Then everybody was also given a guide to equitable sharing for state and local law enforcement agencies. If you look through there under the bookkeeping procedures for internal controls, which is page 27, number 9. And on these controls, it says, quote, obtain approval for expenditures from the governing body, such as the town council or the city manager's office, if appropriate. Okay, I had a copy, which I redacted, and on that copy, there was 275 expenditures over 5 years. And excluding the armored vehicle, only 5 of those expenditures exceeded $5,000. And those 5 expenditures were $88,113.47. I don't believe that the approval of expenditures in excess of $5,000 is micromanaging, but it does begin to conform to the Department of Justice's recommendations of government oversight. I also believe it is our job to ask questions, even the tough ones. Therefore, I will support Supervisor Rose's proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Dodge. Supervisor Rose.
I think Supervisor Molinaro's had his light on longer than I, if I would defer to
I'm
him.
just going by the board.
All
If
right.
you'd like to
No,
let him speak, that's fine.
go ahead. I'll defer.
Supervisor Molinaro.
Thank you. A couple years ago, or last year at budget time, you recall we were talking about a zero budget. We had more, probably much more discussion and argument about whether or not it should be zero or something else until the county executive made the decision for us. But throughout that process, we heard from a significant number of the members of this county board, particularly those who were newly elected, about how important it was to protect the taxpayer. It's all about the taxpayer. They deserve a break, they deserve oversight, they deserve everything that we're going to do for them. So now, leading up to this issue, which will have no impact whatsoever on the budget, but mark my words, will garner the most discussion this evening and the longest amount of time to get to the result, has been met with a number of arguments that are so contradictory, it makes one wonder what, in fact, we're doing. So I've heard now this evening that it doesn't affect the tax levy. I heard a long time ago, it's only bonding, don't worry about it, it doesn't affect the levy. As if somehow the 90 to 100 and, I'd have to look at the budget book, some odd $1 million that we're in debt, we don't have to pay back somehow. Every decision we make affects the levy. When you put a $250,000 vehicle into the county fleet, there's cost to operate, there's cost to maintain, and there are costs to insure. And who on earth do you think drives it? County employees. There is a cost that is not borne out of the drug forfeiture money to put, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, question?
Actually, I could ask you a question if you want to open it to. We already had one that we were already gassing and insuring. I don't understand how this is something new.
I'm not surprised that you don't understand it. I'm not suggesting it's new, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Stay with
All
me.
right.
What I'm
All right.
suggesting is you can't state that it doesn't impact the levy when I just gave you all the examples that it does. We're going to, the second for this evening on this motion wouldn't support a resolution that was before this county board a while back, which was a plan for bicycle paths that truly had no impact on the county levy. Yet we didn't support it because somehow it was detrimental to the taxpayer. But now today we're saying oversight isn't necessary, not going to be a problem at all for the taxpayer. I heard last night in a discussion from a supervisor that if we don't like the donation, this is referred to as a donation, the sheriff buys it, donates it to Kenosha County. For those who don't quite understand how it operates. That, in fact, it was confirmed today by Mr. Gertzen. It's a donation to Kenosha County. We ought to have a say on the donation, one would suspect, wouldn't you think? We're not going to have someone come in and donate 100 acres of land to us and we're just going to accept it and then get a memo that says we should put insurance on it and build a park. I get that it's a donation. All I'm saying is, and let me back up, at no time have I questioned the operation of this organization. Not once. I said repeatedly, if we were talking about the $22,000 that I saw as one account balance, it wouldn't even be an issue. If Kenosha County in the Sheriff's Department was able to sell a vehicle without county board approval, which they cannot do, we saw that last month, this wouldn't even be before us. We'd be none the wiser. It's all about protecting the taxpayer, right? Yet I'm hearing from another supervisor they will not even consider this issue because of who brought it forward. Got to be kidding me. Are we here for the taxpayer or are we here for ourselves? Is it right or isn't it right? And the perception of who brought it forward isn't even factual. It came forward by Supervisor Rose. I heard last night that why would we need to add this layer of oversight when the sheriff is an elected position? Last I checked, the 23 members of this room were the legislative body elected to oversee expenditures within Kenosha County. So we're going to waive that responsibility for one single elected official whose budget has to be approved by us anyhow. So I think you just need to take stock of where it is, what position you are taking, and why you're taking the position. No one has questioned, well, I shouldn't say that. Clearly there's been some question of the issue wouldn't have come up. For the most part, with the exception of Supervisor Dodge, not many have questioned the operation of the K-Dog unit, or the funds for that matter. We're simply saying, if every other division within Kenosha County has the requirement to come forward for an expenditure of a $5,000 limit, why shouldn't the Sheriff's Department? Why is it in this budget that they've eliminated or moved beyond the dotted line accounting procedures between the Sheriff's Department and the administration, and in fact given the Finance Department the oversight, right? I don't think anyone said during the conversation at the Finance Committee meeting that it's because the Sheriff's Department is somehow a runaway organization. It is simply to bring everything into a little bit tighter organization. When you have the experience of Dave Gertzen and his staff behind you, why wouldn't you take advantage of it? I don't hear anybody squawking about that. It's in the budget. I trust because this issue is so doggone important, nobody read that piece. 2 years ago, they took the step, or a year ago, they took the step to require the dotted line accounting. They've gone a step further. Where is the outcry on that issue? This is about consistency. We've purchased 2 vehicles, I believe. In how many years? Supervisor Dodge referenced it. I don't believe there's ever been a car purchase for a drug sting that would have required them to come to us first. This language doesn't require that to purchase drugs to execute an operation, they've got to come to the county board. It has never been, in fact, it was specifically stated by the maker of the motion at the Finance Committee, that is not the intent, nor is that what it says. Yet the sheriff stood up here again today and said that they can't fundamentally operate that division if they've got to come forward to get approval to buy drugs. That is not what this is. We're talking about capital expenditures here. So you say that, Mr. Chairman, you keep bringing up it's only been 2 vehicles in how many years? 20 years, whatever the number is. Well, then where is the discussion? I suspect in the next 20 years, the next 2 vehicles will come forward, they'll be approved, and they'll move on. I'm going to go to the document that we've all had for quite a while. If you look in this document, and I'll tell you, I made the same phone calls that everybody wants to say they made and talk to this person, that person at the Department of Justice, et cetera. Cooperation is what they're looking for. Sharing will be with, hold on. If you look on page 16, subject, top paragraph, Except as noted in this guide, equitable shared funds shall be used by law enforcement agencies for law enforcement purposes only, subject to laws, rules, regulations, and orders of the state or local jurisdiction governing the use of public funds available for law enforcement purposes. I trust we continue to be the local jurisdiction governing the use of law enforcement. If not, I don't know why the sheriff's budget is before us this evening. If you go from there to page 27, number 9, obtain approval for expenditures from the governing body such as the town council or city manager's office if appropriate. I believe it continues to be appropriate if you are going to make a capital expenditure in Kenosha County when we in fact have a county board form of government. And I would indicate that the U.S. Department of Justice agrees with that position. If you turn to you go down to the bottom of page 27, paragraph A, Federal Equitable Sharing Agreement and Certification Form. The agreement must be signed by the head of the law enforcement agency and designated official of the governing body. 21, if you go to bottom, 21 is the footnote. A governing body is an institution or organization that has budgetary oversight over the law enforcement agency. Again, my conversation with the U.S. Department of Justice seems to believe in the footnote they put in the guidelines. So we are not asking to do anything that is out of the ordinary. The clerk, the treasurer, the register of deeds, all generate revenue. Clerk sells properties. Register of deeds records documents. Treasurer collects delinquent taxes. Sometimes from some pretty deadbeat owners of property who scoff the payment of taxes year after year after year. They don't just spend that money any way they'd like, right? There's a budget process that they go through. I get the oversight, the guidelines. Nobody is questioning that. I'm certainly not questioning that here this evening. I'm simply saying if we were going to add to the expense of Kenosha County through the expenditure of these drug funds, then we ought to have the oversight. And it states it here. I don't know how we can dispute the language in here, and certainly the Department of Justice doesn't find a way around it either. Again, I trust this is going to generate more debate than the expenditure of the millions of dollars in bonded money. But if you take stock in where you have been the last 18 months on issues that come before this board, I don't know how you can say our legislative authority should be overstepped or ignored for the purposes of spending $250,000 for a vehicle that we're going to have to operate, maintain, and put employees in every time it rolls out the door. That's just the example. Am I concerned that it's going to somehow get out of control with this sheriff? Absolutely not. But how many times have we had discussions when we have made the statement, it isn't about today, it's about setting us up for the future, which is why you see the accounting reporting language in here. It isn't about today, it's about the future, right? It's why you see the language about the employee policies in here, right? We look at those on a regular basis. Every budget, I believe, is the way the language is in here. It isn't necessarily about today, it's about the future. So if you take the bigger approach to this, you'll understand that we're not coming after the sheriff. This issue got way out of hand, and the blame goes to the two gentlemen who handled it the way it was handled. That isn't our issue. So don't get wrapped up in that. Understand the intent of this language and let the rest of it take care of itself. Don't support the recommendation. Follow the advice of the vice chairman. I appreciate his comments before the debate got started. He's absolutely correct. He was part of all of the discussions that went forward with the budget. This particular issue was vetted thoroughly. It came forward out of the Finance Committee, and I trust it's going to be supported by all, including the Vice Chairman. He's absolutely right on that point. Thank you.
Just to clarify, that particular piece was voted on in finance and was 4-3. So there were 3 dissenting votes on that particular piece. I know what you're spinning it off to say is that the entire finance committee supported it at the end, but that particular piece
I
had a 4-3
never said that,
vote.
Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, if you dozed off. I didn't say anything about the vote. I said it came forward with the support of the
All
Finance
right,
Committee.
I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you, Supervisor
It did have the
Mullen.
support of the Finance Committee. Could I, through the chair to Chairman Rose, did this issue have support of the Finance Committee?
It did.
Oh, all right.
Not right now, Supervisor Molinaro, but I'll let you know if I have anything. Supervisor Montemuro?
Thank you, Chairman. Before this meeting, I sat down with a member of the Sheriff's Department, and they showed me that this finance is overseen by Washington, D.C., and they send the money up there, which was my big concern. But as Supervisor Dodge just said, that doesn't mean that the Washington, D.C. doesn't want local supervision. Now, I sat at a law enforcement committee meeting, and the sheriff was kind enough to update us on the jailer situation. And as far as I understood, there were meetings with the jailers, and everybody was happy, and there was a raise going on. And now this evening, I didn't hear that from a concerned citizen.
Supervisor Molinaro?
Wait, I'm making a point.
Correct.
Also, I'm happy about the K-Dog situation. I think it's wonderful that we've had large marijuana busts, but everyone here knows that I'm concerned about the other drugs as well. So even though knowing that Washington, D.C. is overseeing this, I'm beginning to feel very strongly that local supervision is in order also. So I'm just going to say that I will not support the change, and I will support what the Finance Committee said. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Kohlmeyer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm one of the Finance Administration members that voted against this language. My primary concern, I have no problem with oversight, wanting us to provide oversight on all budget items. This, to me, is completely separate. It's not taxpayer dollars. My main concern is this is highly confidential activity, highly classified. What caught my attention with this issue to begin with was a news story. I don't know if you guys saw this a couple weeks back in the newspaper. The chief of police stated that he was looking at pulling out of this program because there was leaks about some of our financial history, and some names were on a report. I think this is something we have to be very careful. My biggest question is how are we supposed to provide oversight without getting involved in these details? Do we want the sheriff coming in front of committee, in front of the board, explaining what they're going to be doing? To me, this puts our people at risk. This is run through the federal government. It's highly audited. It's had no problems for years. So I guess I look at the flip side. I don't understand the intensity of putting this language in here if this has worked so well for the past few years. And I just see big risks in wanting to make this more bureaucratic, just more information, wanting us to stick our hands in something that I don't know if we want to have our hands in necessarily for the safety of the people that are actually out there busting the drug dealers. I mean, I think we have to be very careful about what we're asking the sheriff and all his personnel to provide. That's my main issue with this. It's not about oversight. It's about what is our role in this process. And I don't think we want to be the people getting all the information on the details of what we would need to really provide oversight on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Kohlmeyer. Supervisor Anita Johnson?
Thank you. I just want to point something out. If you look on the top of the Equitable Sharing Agreement certificate that goes to it's an appendix, page 1 of 5. It's in the back, page 43. If you look on the very top, when these are submitted, task force is checked. That's because this money does not come into the county. It does not come into the county sheriff's department. It comes into a separate entity that was created. It has a separate NCIC number than the Sheriff's Department. It is not county money. The governing body, and a governing body, the definition of a governing body, I just looked it up. The persons who make up the body for the purpose, wait, I'm sorry. The persons who make up a body for the purpose of administering something. Okay, the governing body of the agency that this money goes to are from the task force. It is the chief of police and it is the sheriff. They both jointly make decisions. There is a governing body for this. Again, this is not county money. We are holders of the money, but it is not county money.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has received quite a bit of a conversation, both in committee, other places as well. And I think it should be pointed out that in all the time the discussion has been going on, none of the discussions have had any acrimony about the decision of the sheriff to purchase different items. Whether one thing was purchased, whether the other thing was purchased, there has been no negative comments about the decision-making process. So really that's not what we're looking at here. We're looking at the financial side to say, should there be some amount of explanation, some amount of cooperation between this county board, the finance committee, and in this case, the sheriff's department. It's not treating sheriff's department any different than any other department that's been elaborated on, I think, quite a bit in depth. And also, we're not looking to limit the sheriff's ability to perform the tasks and so forth that is necessary for that department. But you have to understand, from a budgetary process, every time you bring an asset online, there are costs associated with that. When we take a look at the mobile command unit, which again is a little bit of a separate case, that's a $600,000 investment. And if someone's going to make the case that we already have an asset, which we had the old command unit, valued currently at about $35,000, it's a piece of junk, you have to understand that going forward, to maintain that, to staff it, to do all these different things, that's a budgetary consideration. So if any of these other assets should come into the county purview, should come into our area that we're responsible for, we have to be responsible for what comes forward from that. So we're not really asking policy decision as much as we're asking for information sharing. We're saying, if you're going to have something that affects the county budget going forward, we'd like to be informed. We'd like to be part of the discussion. We're not trying to get into the small business of drug busts, who's involved, that type of information. That's not what this statement, this discussion is about. If you take a look at these federal guidelines, I've heard the argument made that we might run afoul of the federal regulations and therefore we could be in jeopardy of losing the drug forfeiture funding. That's not it. If you look at these and you want to boil them down, the feds are asking two things. They're saying, A, don't supplant your enforcement payroll with these drug forfeiture funds. Don't do that. I think we can do that. It's also saying, don't supplant your regularly budgeted items. Uniforms, ammunition, squad cars, anything that's a part of regular law enforcement, don't supplant that. I think that we can satisfy those requirements, and I would think that I could not support the amendment to the budget, that we should be having some amount of responsible discussion with the department head, sheriff in this case, as with any other department head. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to support Supervisor Esposito's amendment. And my reasoning for that is this. Since the beginning of this, granted it was handed to us in not so needed fashion, I think much of our discussion around this has been sloppy. And I say that because, like many of you, or at least some of what I've heard tonight, I too was concerned about the issue of oversight and transparency. But one of the questions I had to ask myself was, why is this even an issue in the first place? It's because we do some sort of drug enforcement work. And there's been a lot in the news, both in print, on television, and on radio, about the expense of incarcerating people, about who gets prosecuted for drug crimes, where we do monitoring and enforcement in terms of certain communities and what those statistics look like. Those questions around this issue were never ever raised. Nor was the question ever raised, what do governments that don't participate in this program do, that do drug monitoring and enforcement work? What does that look like? This has been a really unintelligent discussion, and it's been very strictly isolated to themes around money and management, which granted is a strong component of what we do. I understand that. But I don't think it should always necessarily be the sole focus or the driving force. When you do that, you cut off asking the question, what do my constituents gain for this? How can we be visionary leaders? That's what's been lacking from this conversation. So I'm going to support the amendment. This is absolutely ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Supervisor Molinaro.
Well, I'll tell you, I think the discussion is completely on point if you understand what the issue is. I don't care what the operations, the specific operations are to arrest a drug dealer. Nor should I, nor should we. I don't care what the plan of attack is for buying or selling drugs or taking down an individual or a group. Nor should I, nor should we. What you can't do today is tell me since you got here on this county board that you're all about maintaining budgetary restraint for the taxpayer and then make an argument that you can't support this particular component of the budget resolution because it's going to compromise leaks on how the KDOG organization operates. How on earth would we have compromised the KDOG by having this vehicle come before the county board for approval, when it says right on the back of it, purchased with drug forfeiture funds or something to that effect? Somehow I don't think having that issue before us would have compromised one damn thing in the KDOG organization. But at least I know that we're protecting the taxpayer every single day. Nothing is put at risk in that organization, because they weren't buying that unit to do an undercover sting. So somehow now you have the support at a committee discussion, but the conversation this evening is so unintelligible that it all makes sense to the taxpayer you've been trying to protect for a year and a half. Absolutely makes no sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Molinaro. Supervisor Skolitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also support Supervisor Esposito's motion. And I kind of look at it a little bit differently, and that is, this is not a new program. This program has been around for a while. Obviously, it's had some success. We'd like to have continued success, because I view the drug trade or the drug problem that we have can affect each and every one of us in various ways, whether it's through our kids, our relatives, our neighbors, whatever the case may be. Old and young can all be affected by this. So it's a very important work that the sheriff and the police department of Kenosha are undertaking. Clandestine operations are just that. They should remain clandestine. As Supervisor Johnson had pointed out, these are not taxpayer funds. And yes, I was elected to oversee the taxpayers' best interest. I find it interesting that we've been able to twist that around a little bit and say, well, we're not taking care of the taxpayer because we're not going to oversee some expenditures of non-taxpayer money. Well, guess what? That debate takes place at the next budgetary debate. And if it's deemed that, gee, we can't afford the insurance of a particular piece of equipment, or we can't train particular individuals a certain way, or we can't afford to utilize that entity, well, then I guess it just sits idle. And then the argument would probably be, well, why did we go ahead and buy that for? Well, again, that's balancing what are the priorities of our budget. The safety of the public is one of the most important things that I feel is an obligation of mine. And trying to lay in another layer of oversight in a program that's been running smoothly as far as I can tell. I don't see the DOJ walking in here and saying, you're out of compliance. In fact, I haven't seen anybody talk about that. So if we're so out of compliance, then how has this been allowed to continue on for many years? Successfully, I might add. And I hope there will be many additional years of success with this program without the meddling of the county board. Because we don't need to be having oversight of every little expenditure that a three-time elected and very successful, and quite frankly, none of my constituents call me to complain about the sheriff's performance. So I'd say after being reelected 3 times, he must be doing something right. So I look at this and I'm going, what is this? Is it just a couple rogue supervisor with a penchant for headlines and control, and then let's put this into the budget and then go on to an hour debate about this? I think that this has been carried on far too long. It's a simple motion. I will support it, and I hope that everybody else will too, so we can move on with the budget discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Rose.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just deal with what I hear are some of the arguments here which I disagree with. One, Supervisor Esposito said we shouldn't make the sheriff jump through the hoops. That's what we're doing tonight with every single administration, making them jump through the hoops. That's our job. That's when you pass a budget, you make them jump through the hoops. Other people would say that's not making them jump through the hoops. We're just considering that which is before us, which we're elected to do. I disagree with the proposition that this is not taxpayer money. The whole idea of forfeiture, the theory behind forfeiture of assets is that it is illegally obtained money or other assets. It is forfeited to the general public or to the government. This is taxpayers' money. It isn't the sheriff's money. This is the taxpayers' money. So don't think that this is not. It is analogous to grant money that we receive from the federal government. It becomes taxpayers' money by virtue of the fact that it is illegally begotten. That's the whole theory behind forfeiture. This isn't an audit issue as well. We're not asking for an audit of that. We're not asking the sheriff to come to the county board or committee to seek approval for drug buys. Absolutely ridiculous argument. The argument has been made here by Supervisor Skalitsky that, well, it's been a successful unit and therefore we don't have to supervise anything. We expect it to be a successful unit, but we expect other departments to be successful. And if they're not successful, we can respond to that as well. But that's no argument to forfeiture responsibilities. This is not micromanaging, just part of the checks and balances of the legislative branch of government. The argument is made here that this is overseen by Washington. Does that give you confidence, Supervisor Skalitsky, overseen by Washington? Or you, Supervisor Decker, overseen by Washington? It doesn't give me confidence that it's overseen by Washington. They almost defaulted on our financial responsibilities for the first time in the history of this country. Overseen by Washington. And then there's this argument of public safety. Perhaps Supervisor Molinaro was too modest or did not want to speak to that issue, but I will. This issue of public safety, I don't think Supervisor Molinaro speaks in favor of this resolution. A member of his family, Sergeant Molinaro, was a member of this unit for years. I doubt very seriously that he would do anything to jeopardize the public safety of the members of that unit now or in the past.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Decker.
Call the question.
The question's been called by Supervisor Decker, seconded by Supervisor Ron Johnson. Roll call, please. No,
this is
to
on
call the
debate.
question. So if you're in favor of getting onto the voting, you push yes. If you're not, you push no. That question is called on the amendment. Now we'll vote on the amendment by Supervisor Esposito. Again, if you're in favor of eliminating that language, you will push yes. If leaving it in, you will push no. That language is removed from the budget resolution. On the vote is 15 to 8. I'm going to clear the request to speak, and we can talk now about the budget. Supervisor Molinaro.
Just to clarify, there was one comment from a citizen, one comment from a county supervisor on the compensation for the jail staff. There is, in fact, I guess you can call it additional compensation for the detention officers over and above what the balance of the, generally the balance of the county employees received, which is 0.5% that kicks in January 1 and an additional PTO day. So to the supervisor who asked the question, and I don't know if that's what the gal in the public was suggesting or not, that nothing was done, may not be to everyone's liking, but certainly there has been something additional to address that specific issue in this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Molinaro. Supervisor Skalitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Didn't think it would get to me quite that quickly. For the budget in 2013, we were able to deliver a 0% tax levy, which unfortunately for my constituents resulted in between a 6 to 7% increase in their taxes. So now I find myself on another budget year for 2014, and the administration has proposed a 1.8% levy increase. Now I've been struggling to find the exact number, but I anticipate if anything holds true given the devaluation of the property values, certainly east of the I, my constituents will probably be paying another 7 or 8% this year also. But yet, this administration has come to us and asked for free Wi-Fi to be provided in the downtown business district, and from what I've been able to find in the amendments, for the tune of approximately $190,000. Now, my constituent, the argument is, oh, it'll stimulate business and people come to visit because you'll have free Wi-Fi, and I find that a little bit difficult to believe. But that's okay. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. In my district, my constituents will not directly benefit from what I view as another giveaway program for the city. And I have not received any contacts from my constituents supporting this particular proposal. Nor have I seen a specific return on investment or ROI that's been stated with regards to downtown businesses or what it's going to generate in business. It's just, in general, a nice thing to do. Most downtown businesses already have the internet or Wi-Fi available to them. Whether or not they've opened their router to their clientele or customers, that's up to them to do. But in order to have them perhaps stay in their establishment a little longer, they ought to consider that. One thing that I don't really like about having just a free internet downtown is, because I went through this with my kids, and there are times where I didn't want my children having access to the internet. And it is tremendously difficult to control because they are very smart. They'll go to their friend's house, they'll go here, they'll go there. Well, now apparently all they got to do is go downtown. So it undermines a parent's ability to potentially discipline their children for behavior patterns that they don't care for and support. The vast majority of people with smartphones and tablets have data packages. And the taxpayer shouldn't be forced to subsidize their internet use. I don't believe that it's going to be attracting some mass amount of people coming down there and patronizing businesses. And so I am going to make a motion to remove the free internet service for the downtown business area from tonight's or the 2014 budget.
It's been
Thank you.
moved by Supervisor Skalitsky, seconded by Supervisor Decker to remove the Wi-Fi for downtown, the funding for that. Supervisor Skalitsky, any further comments?
No, I would hope, I've struggled to try and find areas within this budget that we could cut to get back down to a levy-neutral position. And it has been very challenging to do so. Certain areas, you know, they're inevitable. The problem I have is I don't see a lot of my constituents seeing a 1.8% increase in their income level. And everybody wants to say, well, this is a modest and this is a small. Well, guess what? If you lost your job or you had your pay frozen or perhaps even reduced, it's a lot of money because it's piled on to all the other years of excessive taxation. And you know what? We just had our state legislature pass a $100 million property tax refund or cut. And yet, what are we going to do? We're going to turn around and raise our taxes. It undermines what we're trying to do in our state here, and that is make it more attractive for businesses as well as residents to either stay or to come to and make it allow our economy to become more vibrant, because then everybody is going to benefit from that. We've had some real wins here lately between Amazon and Majestic. And as a result, I'm just looking at this and saying, this is something that benefits the city, not the county. And I know everybody says, well, the city is the engine. If the city's the engine, then why is the rest of the county having to continually support the engine by increasing property taxes because of devalued properties within the city? It's about time the city starts picking itself up and supporting itself. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Rose on the amendment?
Yes. I think this is one of the more regressive proposals that I've heard come before the board, very frankly. The argument that, quote, it benefits the city, not the county. It benefits the city, not the county. Think about that argument for a moment. Are we going to analyze every proposal that comes before this board on that basis? It benefits the one section but not the other. Next time the county supervisors come forward with something that benefits them with them, am I to say, well, that benefits the county and doesn't benefit my constituents? I'm going to oppose that on that basis alone. Let them pull themselves up by the bootstraps. Is that the good argument? Clearly, I represent the 2nd District, and I don't forget that. But I also live in this community, as do you. And I did receive, as did you, on the internet today, a letter from the Kenosha Downtown Association, a representative of businesses. I'm sure there are Republicans and Democrats and independents in that group. They are supporting it. I have heard nothing but positive comments about that from business people in this community. And if you look at successful communities in this country, cities that are growing, cities that are attracting others, articles written about them, these are the kind of things that they have. We're long overdue here with free Wi-Fi. I applaud the executive for proposing this. This is an investment in our future. This is not some, as was argued, a free giveaway. Ridiculous.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Hallman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur completely with Supervisor Rose. I do believe it was perhaps 2 or 3 budgets ago that we decided to try to put in infrastructure to improve broadband throughout western Kenosha County, actually throughout all of Kenosha County. And it was a rather significant investment, far more significant than what we're proposing to do in downtown Kenosha with the wireless. And I would just like to add, I suppose I would be in favor of the supervisor's proposal, but my constituents would probably want to say, let's get rid of some parks, let's get rid of planning and development. You know, I need more whiteout in my desk drawer and a pen, and that could take all night. So this is a road we ought not to go down. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've heard quite a few interesting comments. I've heard not in my backyard. It won't help my constituents. My children are using the internet. Where do I begin? I have a 20-year-old son. He has an iPhone. We go for a walk. I tell him, put that in your pocket, turn it off. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think it's a big deal. When you take a look at being progressive or regressive, I think Kenosha is headed in the direction of progress, whether it's city, whether it's county. I think progress is a good thing if it's handled properly. Talk about the things that drive an economy. Wisconsin, what do we have? Drives our economy: agriculture, manufacturing, tourism. Tourism is a big deal. We have a lot of people that come to our downtown for our lakefront. Be nice to service them and help them out. I have a brother who lives in South Carolina, and it gets very, very busy down there in the coastal region. And he says, tourism's a beautiful thing. Tourists come, leave their money, you go away. Here in downtown Kenosha, when tourists come, whether it's for the tall ships, a marathon, whatever type of thing they're doing, Taste of Wisconsin, all these different things, to have just a very small amenity, which is wireless internet, it's a big thing. It makes us a player. It brings us up to speed. So to look at a very, very small budgetary concern, at least in my mind, $100,000 and how many $1 million budget we have, it's not a big deal. We should be progressive. We should be looking forward. So this amendment, I could not support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I sat on this county board for 16 years, many years ago, and obviously the last 4. And I've never drawn a line at the city limits and said, I won't vote for this because it's in Paddock Lake or Silver Lake. I remember we just bought property out in Silver Lake to expand the park out there. We are Kenosha County Board Supervisors, and our job is to be a benefit to the Kenosha County as a whole. I heard complaints out there about there's no transportation out in the rural area, but no one out there wants to pick up the cost, and we can't do it. They want the city to do it, I guess. This is outrageous. Next time we have any votes that go beyond the city limits, we're supposed to say it's not in my area, so I'm not going to vote for it? Come on. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Supervisor Molinaro.
Well, Supervisor Ron Frederick is spot on. But if you're paying attention, this is all about having it both ways, right? It's partisan. It's partisan. I trust, maybe 22 out of the 23 wouldn't say what I'm about to say, but I trust the previous motion would have been supported had the sheriff run and been elected as a Democrat instead of changing, being elected as a Republican. Because the feedback I've gotten from the second to this motion is very simply, why should I pay for some rich guy's Wi-Fi so he can sit at home on his deck at Harbor Park and be connected to work? So somehow, this is going to help the taxpayer by cutting this piece because it's in the city and it's not going to benefit the county in any way, shape, or form. And all of his constituents didn't call him to tell him they were in support of it. You didn't hear him say any call to say they were opposed to it either, right? But this is the spin that we're going to see for any issue that comes before us. I would suspect if county executive spots were a little bit brighter one way or the other, this would be a no-brainer. And you'll see it continue. Somehow I'm supposed to be buy into the argument that some kid is going to leave his house after getting himself in trouble and not allowed to use the internet. He's going to leave his house and go downtown from Supervisor Skalitsky's district to sneak on the internet next to my office building so his parents don't know he's doing it? Great, top-notch argument for saying to the state, or to anyone else in this country, the state of Wisconsin and Kenosha County and downtown Kenosha are open for business. That is one hell of an argument. I supported all day, much like I supported and moved forward with the county executive, the broadband for Supervisor Skalitsky's district and Supervisor Decker's district and anyone else in Kenosha County, 166,000 strong. Next issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Molinaro. Supervisor Arrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to extend respect to Supervisor Molinaro, Supervisor Skalinsky, and all my fellow supervisors who always voice their opinion. I think we're very adamant and very, very in love with our districts. The one thing I just want to point out is that at the end of the day, the best thing we can do with our constituents is to tell them the truth. The bottom line is that, you know, we're not all going to always agree on every dollar amount that we spend in Kenosha County, but in order to make Wisconsin progressive, and specifically here in Kenosha County, we have to continue to move forward with the future. And what's the future? I mean, almost everything that I know, from laptops to cell phones to any other electronic device, runs on the Wi-Fi. You know, if we can get the broadband in the other areas that are not supported with Wi-Fi in the future, I would love to see that happen. But I think we have to be responsible and just say that, you know, whatever comes our way, if it can benefit the entire county, that we need to support that. So I just wanted to speak to that. I normally don't get into these issues because I pretty much know where these issues are going. I've always ran on what is best for the people, and we need to put the Wi-Fi downtown. The downtown area of Kenosha is a very progressive part of our area in the county. People come and visit. It's completely packed during the spring and the summertime, and I'm not really aware of what takes place in the fall and the winter, and it's growing, and we just need to continue to make sure that we keep up with the times, because we're no longer speaking from coffee cans and string. This is a Wi-Fi generation, and like I said before, I just believe that this is something that we need to do. I hope that we don't nitpick everything in this budget tonight, because the things that are in this budget, I think that we have gotten this thing down to the bare bones, and we cannot start nitpicking about how much copy paper we buy and what department gets this and what department gets that. I think we need to be adult about this. We all know that we have to spend a certain amount of money. I think that we have gotten to a number that is feasible. I don't believe nobody will always be happy with what we pick. I heard people complain last year. They said you should have cut more. And I don't understand what else we could have cut last year. So let's be adult about this. Let's get on with this budget, and let's move this thing forward progressively for Kenosha County. I think we've done a wonderful job as supervisors doing what we've done in the fiscal times that we're experiencing, not only in Wisconsin, but in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Arrington. Supervisor Decker.
Since I was called out by another supervisor, I'd just like to point out that I voted against the fiber ring out in the county because I thought it was a waste of taxpayer dollars. And they forget to mention that the fiber ring first went in the city of Kenosha, and it slowly went out to the county. So it's not like the county was the only one that got the fiber rings. And again, I'm still glad I voted against that, because you know what? We paid for that infrastructure, our tax dollars, and yet county residents have to pay more than what Time Warner charges for their cable. They paid for their own infrastructure. We paid for this fiber ring, but the company we hired charges more than the company that competes with them. So to say that, well, because you voted for the fiber ring, you support the county and all that kind of stuff, it's just ridiculous. and it just, ugh, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Bruning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually live west of the I, and I'm very happy that the Wi-Fi is coming to downtown Kenosha. I take my kids down there all the time, and yes, they have their iPods with them all the time. I make a game out of it. There's so many apps out there that you can have them set it up on there that it's a scavenger hunt, or they're looking up certain items from the park system. It's a valuable tool, and the way that technology is going, we need to understand it's just going to get more and more. Everything is becoming technology. We have to advance with it, and Kenosha County is doing a great job. I learned a long time ago when I first became a supervisor that I am a supervisor first for the 21st District, and then I'm a supervisor for Kenosha County as a whole. And everyone needs to remember that we are supervisors for Kenosha County. That is our title. It's very important to do everything for Kenosha County. If the city gets more, it's not a competition. Doesn't matter if the city gets more than the county, it's still the county of Kenosha. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Brunig. Supervisor Alverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, I think enough's been said on this, but I think it's very naive to think that companies like Amazon, Gordon Foods, Uline, those type of people, and the successes have been mentioned here this evening that we've had, very naive to think that they just throw a dart at anybody that's got a freeway and say this is a perfect location for us. They look at the quality of life for their people. When they're going to be moving a progressive company like Amazon to Kenosha, believe me, they knew we had broadband here in Kenosha County. They're talking about employing 1,000 people. And the type of people that they notoriously employ are not people that don't use broadband, don't use the internet, don't use any of these types of advances. So I applaud the county executive and CABA, the downtown people that thought of this. And believe me, broadband, personally, is no huge advantage for me. But I will tell you that, I used to spend, and I'm talking 30-some years ago when I started my small business, I used to spend $9,000 a year on Yellow Pages. I don't spend anything on Yellow Pages anymore. So that's a little advantage to people that don't even think what internet, broadband, all these advances have made. Anything that happens to downtown Kenosha is a plus for me living in Twin Lakes. Anything that I used to say this about even Milwaukee until the Potawatomis have thrown these darts at us, but anything that happens in Racine, Waukesha, I think of us as an area of the state. Yes, I know anything that happens well for the state or good for the state is advantage for me also, but you look at your district, Lake Geneva for me, Delavan for me, where I live. So to be progressive, I applaud, and believe me, everyone is watching, and that broadband was a very bold move, one of the first counties, if not the first in the state to do it, and it's starting to pay off. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Alverman. Supervisor Rose.
Move the previous question.
It's been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor O'Day to call the question. So all those in favor?
Aye. Roll call.
We got to roll call that. I need 2/3. I appreciate everybody's gusto, but let's vote on it. And then I'll hold it up. Okay, the question is called on the amendment by Supervisor Skalitsky. We'll vote on that. Is roll call requested on that?
Yes.
Okay, we will roll call vote on that amendment. Come on. Okay, that amendment fails 20-3. Supervisor Rose.
I move what the previous question.
Okay. On, what? What is that for? Is that for the last, Okay, I would ask the board to allow me to vote no for that, since that's what I pushed twice. So, any objections? Okay, thank you. I will vote no on that. Supervisor Rose.
Again, I would move the previous question. Yes.
Okay, the question has been moved. Actually, I see no other lights, so at this point, we'll just vote on the budget as amended.
Roll
And
call.
we'll roll call that.
Second before you start voting.
You ready? Okay. The whole budget as amended, yes. Something's up here. Yeah, somebody sabotaged it. Okay, the budget passes 21-2. And we'll continue on with the agenda.
New business, Resolution 62 from Finance Administration Committee regarding initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general...
Yes? No, we voted to close debate, and it was closed, and then there was no more lights, so we moved the last... Yeah, we're out, yeah. Okay.
New business, Resolution 62 from Finance Administration Committee regarding initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes in an amount not to exceed $7,465,000 for budgeted capital projects and road and highway improvements. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Grady, yes. Colmeyer, yes. Kubicki, yes. Molinaro, yes.
Supervisor Rose?
I would move the resolution.
It's been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor O'Day. Supervisor Esposito, did you have a question on this? Okay. Okay.
You didn't hit my light, but I just wanted to make it a public record that I would abstain from the special assessment part of the budget. For myself.
Okay.
I had my light on, but you didn't hit
okay.
it, so. I just like to make that public record, please.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Supervisor Rose on this motion.
All right, thank you. This resolution funds all of the capital improvements and capital outlay over $5,000 in the 2014 budget.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Seeing no more lights, we do need to roll call all
Yes.
these votes. So.
2/3.
Yeah. Terry, now yours
I
is
did
broke.
not. Thank you.
That passes unanimously.
Resolution 63 from Finance Administration Committee regarding initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes in an amount not to exceed $1,700,000 for public safety software. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Grady, yes. Colmeyer, yes. Kubicki, yes. Molinaro, yes.
Supervisor Rose?
I would move the resolution.
Resolution 63 has been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Rose?
All right, thank you. This resolution would finance the public safety joint services software in the amount set forth in the resolution. It was considered by the Finance Committee and approved, even though no software to date has been selected.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Molinaro?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, through maybe the chairman to Corporation Counsel, what is the process, and I'll get to my point then after the question's answered. What is the process by which the Joint Services Board can move forward with the purchase of whatever software they ultimately determine they're going to purchase? Does it come back to the Finance Committee and County Board with the authorization of this bond issue in the budget? I intended to address it in the budget. Supervisor Rose moved to close debate. Neither here nor there, but that's why I'm bringing it up here. Incidentally, I would ask, there's still some question back here whether or not we did take the vote on the budget or to close the debate. If the clerk can confirm that we did vote twice?
Did we vote twice? Once to
Close debate and on the budget?
Yep.
I guess so. Okay, so anyways, my question is, I can't help that. Does this come back to the county board for approval of the actual purchase of the specific software, is my question.
Right today, what if it comes back?
Mr. Swartz, if you would like to come up to the mic and answer that.
The joint services budget, and they don't have to come back. We're authorizing them. We put $200,000 in the 2014 budget and $1,500,000 in the 15 budget. This authorizes them to go ahead and spend it.
All right, then I'm going to make a motion to my debate is to make a motion to amend to have this come back to the Finance Committee and the County Board, or to table the resolution altogether.
I think it'd be safer to table it altogether. I don't.
So moved. Here's my rationale. So before anyone panics, I'm talking to you specifically, Mr. Chairman. Understand, I'll explain fully where I'm coming from on this, which is in excess of 90 minutes of phone conversation with multiple parties the last 3 days. And I didn't get this clarified at the Finance Committee meeting. I had the opportunity, and I would say to some degree challenged as to whether or not I was going to take the same approach I did last year with this issue, and I didn't. And here's the issue today. And I take this on full authority, that in fact we have, and I don't know that, I guess they're no longer here, so whether they're going to nod in agreement or not, that all agencies that will be affected by this change, with the exception of the jail, is on board with making a move to a new platform. The jail is not. They are digging their heels in that they will not make a move at this point. It is against, at least at this point in time, the recommendation of the consultant that we've hired. I am not willing to take the risk that they don't come along with joint services, 911, the courts, everybody else, records, etc., whomever is included here. The advice is that, sure, they can be left alone with patches and scripts and customized programming, but at the end of the day, I was told within 3 years they're going to need to move, and the cost will be significantly higher to do it then. So my consternation is not necessarily with where we're at, although we were here last year. I understand we've changed direction a little bit in terms of the consultant that we brought in. I support it all. I'm fine with that. I told you last year, I'll tell you again today. When the time comes, I'll buy the software. But I can't take the risk of not getting all parties at the table and making the move collectively. This information has to be available across the board. I heard some information relative to what can be available from the courts to every other agency in the matter of seconds.
Motion to table is not debatable.
I heard him.
Okay, so at this point, we will stop the debate. We had a motion to table this from Supervisor Molinaro, seconded by Supervisor Decker.
I didn't realize it, or I wouldn't have debated.
And I didn't either. I wouldn't let it go. So, all right, at this point, we will move to take a roll call vote on whether or not to table this.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
To Corporation Counsel? Is table the right motion?
That's up to you, but I think it's a safer motion when we're dealing with the bonds.
Rather than refer it back to finance?
I believe that this has to be done in a timely fashion, and I think we're going to run into a time
So
issue.
table is better. My motion stands.
No, you want to continue with the table? Because I think if you table it,
Well, I do, because I don't think we're going to hear from our consultants to the full board and anything else in a timely manner anyway. So the table stops the bond issue, and I guess that's what I'm looking for.
Supervisor Rose, did you have a point of information?
I think this is relevant. Could I have the mic?
Yeah,
I think this is relevant on the issue to table and what we can or cannot put in this bond resolution on advice of the bond counsel, that we should not in this resolution put language that the board will make a decision as to what software we will select, that more properly would be in the budget resolution. Now, we could amend the budget resolution here to accomplish what he wants. I didn't, when I moved to closed debate, I didn't realize that's what he wanted to do, but I am told that that type of amendment on this resolution would not conform to the law on bond resolutions. So I guess my point is, why are we tabling here?
Okay.
Perhaps we could accomplish that by reopening the budget resolution, amending it, and accomplish the same thing.
Okay.
We could, I guess we certainly could table this, but we're then stuck in
Yeah.
the same position. Since we passed the budget resolution, we did authorize the $200,000. I think we're kind of stuck there unless we amend that.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman?
And your point of order is?
Mr. Chairman, I still do not believe that we passed the budget this evening. And I think this could be a solution. My recollection of the chain of events here, and I said it to the people around me, and I know the question was asked, but we had Supervisor Skalitsky's amendment. Someone called the question.
He's on.
Someone called the question. We voted to close. Then we voted Supervisor Skalitsky's motion down. Supervisor Rose then moved the previous question. We voted on that, and that was it.
No, I said that we don't need to move the question, and he didn't even get a second to move the question because there was no more lights on. He nodded his head, and we continued on with the vote. So she's got the 2 votes.
That wasn't clear.
That wasn't clear at all.
Okay, well,
Well, the chairman announced that we're going to vote on the main motion because there is no other lights on.
We said the whole budget.
Why?
okay. All right, we're getting wound up here. Now, we have a motion on the floor that we've heard, we can't have debate on, but there is some concern. Do you want to leave the motion on the table? To table on.
Again, through the chairman to Corporation Counsel, I mean, if I can, bottom line is this, if I can reopen the budget and have this conversation, I'm happy to do it. Now, that's going to take a motion to reconsider, I'm assuming. There's no guarantee I'm going to get those votes, so, and I'm only I can assure you, I only want to talk about this one issue, but that's what you're up against.
Okay, then we, I guess, as a board, have to take all the information we have and vote if you're leaving that motion to table on there. This time it was called for roll call, so we'll roll call whether to table this piece of the bonding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Supervisor Molinaro made a motion to table this resolution. Supervisor Decker seconded it, and then there's no debate on it. No, there's no debate on it. So, yeah. The Corporation Council let me know that there was no debate on a table motion, so we have to continue on.
And still take it up in the meeting, in this same meeting, if we would like to remove it from the table in this meeting, correct?
At this meeting, you could.
Because we're not
at a fu-
tabling it
at
to a certain date,
At a
we're
future
changing-
meeting, you would have to notice it separately.
So if we wanted to table it now, possibly someone make a motion to reconsider the budget to talk about some issue, we could take it up again if needed.
Yeah, I mean, can you
That's
pull it off?
point of information.
Can you pull it off the table later on in the meeting?
Mhm.
Okay, but it has nothing to do with reconsidering the budget.
It's separate.
That's, right, that'd be a separate, thank you.
So it's up for a vote now,
Okay.
properly up for a vote.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to table this piece.
Vote, which you already took, then why are these individual line item resolutions?
You're on.
I just
What?
said, if this resolution is tied into the overall budget vote, then why are we
It's not.
voting on each?
This is separate. This
Okay,
is
so then
bonding.
we should be able to then at least discuss it as a separate line item. I guess I'm not understanding why we can't talk about,
Motions to table are not discussed.
Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna vote on
Okay.
tabling this.
no, I'm not table it then.
If you're in favor of tabling this particular resolution, you vote yes. If you're not, and keeping it back open for debate and continuing on, you vote no. What is, Bernie, what does he need? What's it take? Just simple majority? Okay, that motion to table fails. Supervisor
Then
Molinaro?
on this particular motion, I'll finish my thought here, and I guess I don't know if there's a way to, I don't know how we amend it, or if there's an amendment that can be done here, but again, my concern is that I believe there is going to need to be some support based on all the conversations that I've had from the Finance Committee, Judiciary and Law, and the County Board, to make sure that this county purchases what is going to be in the best interest of the taxpayers. I get that there is some ownership and there's some sense of commitment to what, in fact, is in place right now in the jail. At the same time, we're spending an awful lot of time, energy, and effort to understand what we need. Again, I'll go back to what we talked about earlier, not for today or tomorrow, but for the future. And the future for joint services, the sheriff's department, the courts, and everybody else isn't 3 years from now, right? The county isn't going anywhere. The future is long-term. Our experts are telling us that this needs to be a comprehensive migration. I'm confident that the Joint Services Committee feels that way, but when push comes to shove, we see where things can end up. So I'm looking, quite honestly, to provide some further support from the county board as a whole to the Joint Services Board, to the director and to the consultant who are telling us what it is we ought to be doing here. So, I mean, I can't make any motions, I guess, on the advice of counsel that it'll make it illegal. If you bear with me for 1 second, maybe we have something, just in. Let me add this, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Be it further resolved, let's see here. All right, but this is being asked to be added to the budget resolution. I mean, is there an opportunity for me to amend the resolution or the budget at this point, or does it have to be reopened?
I believe it has to be reopened, but we'll ask Corporation Counsel.
Can a friendly amendment be added at this point, Mr. Counsel?
Just while he's looking that up, I'll give you a little point of information on, you know, certainly the jail situation is being looked at by everybody, including the consultant, the evaluation team, who they are a member of, and the Joint Services Board. So, you know, I understand that everybody wants the pieces to fit. We don't even have, they haven't even settled on a software package yet. They're looking at the RFPs. So I'm sure that their wants and needs and opinions are going to be taken into account. So, I mean, just for your information, this is not a, you know, I mean, we're at a point now where, I mean, you're asking for something to be put in that, you know, hasn't even been evaluated, and they're on the evaluation team. So I'm a little confused by that, but.
Well, that doesn't entirely help. I mean, it certainly helps my argument significantly when you're now telling me we don't even know, again, what we're buying, but we want to bond $1.7 million. And I don't want to get into that with you because that's not my intention, but no means no, I understand it, and right now it is an absolute adamant, I don't care what you buy because what we have is what we want, period. I don't know how you get around that. And again, I have had so much conversation about it, I'm tired of having the discussion, to be honest with you. But it's real, and it's a real concern for me.
On the motion to reconsider, a question is asked if we could make a motion to reconsider the budget at this meeting. And our local rules do allow us to reconsider at the same meeting or the next meeting. And if it's at the next meeting, it has to be agenda'd.
To the Corporation Counsel, couldn't he, instead of reopening the whole budget, merely as part of this resolution, amend the budget resolution along the lines of this?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Be it further resolved that the county board approve the specific software for the joint services financed by resolution number 63. So it's tied in with the bonding resolution, but it's not part of the bonding resolution, but it's relevant to it. Be it further resolved that the county board approve the specific software for joint services financed by resolution number 63.
Prior to purchase.
And that be part of the budget resolution without reopening that.
Ernie?
I'll make that motion. Give me that.
The motion probably could be made in that order, in that way.
Yeah.
But it should not, in my view, be applied to this initial resolution to support the promissory notes. I think that, as you all know, the initial resolution to finance the promissory notes has also several other motions that are things that come before the board for, like, going to market and approving the sale and things like that. So you still have control of whether or not to issue these bonds, or these promissory notes, I mean. And so that we don't jeopardize the bond issue, I would say I would recommend don't apply any motions to this bond resolution, but rather deal with the budget or modifications to the budget. Or a separate resolution at a later date, because you have a lot of time, remember, before you issue these bonds. You have months.
All right, do we have bond counsel here, correct?
I don't think so.
Well, I'm sorry, yeah. All right, so Mr. Gertzen may have the answer to this through Chairman and Mr. Gertzen. On this resolution 63, where it says be it resolved, principal and interest on such notes is the end of that paragraph. If we added, be it further resolved that the county board approve the specific software to be purchased for joint services by resolution number 63 prior to purchase of the software. If we add it to this bond resolution, that is somehow problematic?
Yes, we can amend that resolution in that manner.
Why?
Bond counsel has advised that we can't add that kind of language to the initial resolution.
Did they have a
They
inkling I was going to do it, or what? I didn't know I was going to do it.
Pardon me, I didn't hear.
Well, I guess you're saying bond counsel advised he can't do it in that manner.
Right.
I wasn't.
The way they would advise is that you amend the budget. This kind of a motion would be an amendment to the budget. And I guess if Corp Counsel advises that you can amend the budget that you adopted, amending a budget is a 2/3 vote. So that's the way we normally amend a budget, so.
All right, thank you. Nothing further.
Okay. You said your comments are done? Okay. Supervisor Skalitsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure who I'm going to direct my question to, but it was stated that this is $1.7 million for software, but we don't know what specific software. Is that accurate? We just know we need it, but.
Well, we know the project could be anywhere $3+ million.
Okay.
We know our share is gonna be X amount of dollars.
Okay.
And we know that it's coming up, this year, we're gonna start spending money. So that's why we need it in the budget, we need it to be bonded for.
So is this initial resolution that we're going to vote on here authorize the issuance of these bonds, or will it come before us for another time for the final authorization? Because authorizing $1.7 million for an unknown entity, I'm not quite comfortable with. And I don't understand why the bond vote can't be brought before the board at another meeting. That's what I'm a little unsure about. Because we've done that before.
Dave, if you would like to speak on the process that he's questioning.
I think the answer is the same as Corp Counsel gave. Yes, you will get another kick at the cat on this. We'll bring a resolution setting the sale and structure of this, and then another resolution awarding the sale. And, at that time, you could amend that, the resolution and remove that if you don't like it. I think the other thing I heard Corp Counsel say is we could amend the budget at any time. I mean, we probably won't be going to market until August. So we do many budget amendments during the year and for many different reasons, and it takes a 2/3 vote after the initial budget has been approved, but we can amend the budget for many reasons. So I think I'm in harmony with the Corp Counsel advice on this.
But they will come back before us, is what you're saying?
Yes, they will come back again. You will have another kick at the cat on this $1.7 million.
So through the chair to Mr. Geertsen, at that time when they come back, will we have at least named what it is that we're buying? Maybe. Or what's the intent of that? Okay, yes. Thank you.
Supervisor Montemir?
Forgive me, Chairman, but I want to ask, when you always say 2/3 vote, does it have to be above 2/3, or does it have to be 2/3? We're 23 people. Is 2/3 vote 15, or is it 16?
We averaged the partial person up.
So 15 qualifies for 2/3?
Let's see, I did the math on that.
Because we just did that with that.
2/3 is 16 votes.
Okay, then you tell me, we have to look at that last vote we did on their amendment, because we had 15 to 8.
That one, we just needed a simple majority vote.
Yeah.
You did,
It's a
but it
different
wasn't
kind of vote.
It's a different kind of vote.
To amend the budget is 2/3.
But spending money, anytime money spending is 2/3, correct?
No, to amend the budget is 2/3. Passing the budget is a majority.
Okay.
And later on, like if we were to reconsider it and amend it, it'd be 2/3. And tomorrow, if we wanted to amend it, 2/3. In August, if we wanted to amend it, 2/3. But in initial tonight, it was just a majority.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Johnson?
I just want to point out a couple things. I sit on joint services. I really feel that this is a non-issue. I have had the chance several times to meet with people from the sheriff's department, and the jail has absolutely not refused to participate in this or refuse. Even if they did, the Joint Services Board is the one who votes to choose the software that will come here. So even if they completely said, no, we're not having anything, which they're not going to do, and I've been assured that from the chief deputy. And I've ensured that they are attending the meetings and that they're being involved in all of the evaluations of it. Again, this is going to come back before us when we know exactly what it is. So those were just the 3 points I wanted to make.
Thank you. Supervisor Molinaro.
Mr. Chairman, I will apologize to the Director Genthner right now, but I'm going to ask through the chairman for Director Genthner to come to the microphone, please.
Tom?
Good evening.
Thank you, Tom.
Everybody, I say everybody because I'm trying to be respectful of those who, and I apologize, Tom. My understanding is that specifically Chief Deputy Smith has adamantly stated there is no intention to make a change of the software platform within the jail. Is that a statement that you would agree with or not?
We're in an evaluation process. The Sheriff's Department is participating in that evaluation process. My conversations with Chief Deputy Smith is that he's very comfortable with the jail software. They would prefer to stay with that jail software, but they are participating in that evaluation process. If, as we go through this evaluation process, they do not find something that they're comfortable with that is better than what the jail has, they would prefer to stay with the jail software.
Softly stated. Thank you. Very softly stated compared to the discussions I've had with others. Now, specifically to the question that was posed by Supervisor Skalitsky and alluded to by Supervisor Johnson, or directly stated Anita Johnson, let's make sure we are very, very clear. Yes, this bond issue will come back to the county board for approval. Yes, absolutely 100%. The issuance will be back before the county board. At that point in time, because you passed the budget this evening, they could own $1.7 million worth of our share of a software and have it 95% implemented. If the wind blew in the right direction, all of a sudden, after 2 years of kicking this can around, and you'll have every opportunity to issue that bond. That'll be all the opportunity you will have. I specifically asked the question, I don't know how Supervisor Johnson could dispute the answer that was given. It will not come before the county board or any other committee for approval of the specific purchase. Is anyone, Mr. Chairman, in the room who can dispute what I just said? Thank you. So, to be clear, you will own your share of $1.7 million worth of software, and it could be operating by August. Doubtful, but it's certainly possible. So don't say that we're going to have an opportunity to look at it. Mr. Genthner, I understand his soft answer to the question. I'm here to tell you today, right now, the answer is we are not switching. I'm not willing to take the risk. Thank you.
Supervisor Dodge.
Yes, mine is a point of information. Supervisor Montemurro asked about a 2/3 majority, and through the chair of the Corporation Council, I'd like to ask if we are amending or removing a provision from the budget. Is that a simple majority or a 2/3 requirement?
From this point on, it would be 2/3.
And then would a 15 to 8 be a 2/3, or would a 16 to 7 be a 2/3?
16 votes would be
So then the
required.
amendment failed.
The point is, from this point on, to approve the budget with the budget resolution needs a simple majority. From that point on, you need 2/3.
But the amendment required a 2/3 for the amendment to pass? Question.
No, no, oh, no. You mean during the adoption of the initial budget? Yeah, during the adoption of the initial budget, it can be amended like any ordinary motion by a majority.
Simple majority.
During
Thank you.
the passage of the original budget resolution. But the legislature wants to make it difficult to change the budget once it's adopted, so after it's adopted, it takes a 2/3 vote to amend it.
Thank you.
That's what I'm just saying, which one I was thinking.
Thank you, Supervisor Dodge. Supervisor Rose.
All right, a question on that line to the Corporation Council. Assuming we pass the bond resolution tonight, could you recognize Supervisor Molinaro to offer this resolution, which would not be a amendment to the budget resolution, but just a standalone resolution, thereby requiring only a majority vote?
I don't know what the motion is.
Well, we can restate it. It was stated by myself as well as Supervisor Molinaro, but go ahead and state it. You have it right there.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Okay.
Be it further resolved that the county board approve the specific software to be purchased by joint services by resolution number 63 prior to purchasing of the specific software.
I think that's the question that Mr. Geertsen commented on, that would run afoul
No,
of
not as,
advice of-
no, not as part of the bond resolution. We understand that. But as just a standalone resolution following the passage of this bond resolution.
Be it further resolved to start with, it starts with be it further resolved?
Well, I move.
You'd have to move, I'm not, I don't think I understand, Supervisor Rose, what the goal, the procedure is.
Well, why couldn't he move that as a standalone resolution and it be adopted by majority vote as opposed to amending the budget resolution?
Well, it's not on the agenda as a separate resolution, so that's why it couldn't be considered tonight.
Well, I guess I would suggest that it's part of the budgetary discussion, and
If he wants to make a motion to reconsider the budget or amend the budget, it would be a 2/3.
all right.
Thank you.
Ready to vote?
Supervisor Montanaro.
I'm sorry, but I'm confused because we had, when Supervisor Rose, Molinaro, and Dodge brought up the amendment, well, not them, but when the other people brought up the amendment to the budget to change the budgetary line for the Sheriff's Department and the forfeiture funds, was that supposed to be a 2/3 vote? Okay, then I'm done with that question. Thank you.
I see no more lights. We will vote on Resolution 63. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see it. Okay, Supervisor Noble?
I want to make a motion to reconsider the budget so that we can make a resolution to get it in.
We're on 63, okay?
Okay. So I
You can
keep
make
my
it-
light on as soon as we get done voting on this
All
one.
right.
What are we voting on? Somebody could, are we voting on the resolution as it is right now?
We're voting on the resolution as presented.
Okay, then I want to talk too.
Supervisor Decker?
I'd like to make a motion to refer Resolution 63 back to committee.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to send this back to committee. Through the chair to Dave Geertsen, is there a timing issue with this bond situation?
Not from the issuance of the bonds. So it doesn't affect the timing of the issuance, as long as it gets brought back in a reasonable period of time.
Okay, so there won't be any timing issues if they refer it back to the committee?
Not related to the issuance of the bonds.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything?
I'm done.
You're done? Okay. Supervisor Frederick?
I agree with Supervisor Molinaro. If we approve that is right now, all we're going to do is get the bill. We're not going to have any control over anything. I think we should refer it back to the Finance and Personnel Committee, and we can sort through it then.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Molinaro made it, or no? And Molinaro seconded. Okay, on the motion to send it back to committee, anybody else? Roll call is requested. Majority, I believe.
Majority. Motion to refer. Frederick.
Okay, that is passed to send this back to the committee.
Resolution, are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Resolution 64 from Finance Administration Committee regarding initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes in an amount not to exceed $2,600,000 for county building improvements. Rose, yes. Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Grady, yes. Komeyer, yes. Kubicki, yes. Molinaro, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Would you like me to call on somebody else?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Thank you. I move Resolution 64.
Resolution 64 has been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Kohlmeyer. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. This resolution authorizes $2.6 million for the building improvements for this building. We've talked about that, and I don't think anything more needs to be said.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Is this on his, your two? Then turn your mic off. Ron Frederick, you don't need to speak. All right, seeing no lights, we do need a roll call on this. Three-quarter vote. It was seconded by Supervisor Kohlmeyer. That passes.
Resolution 65 from Finance Administration Committee regarding initial resolution authorizing the issuance of general obligation promissory notes in an amount not to exceed $1,500,000 for Kenosha Area Business Alliance grants. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Grady, yes. Kohlmeyer, yes. Kubicki, yes. Molinaro, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
I move resolution number 65.
Resolution 65 has been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Vice Chair Kubicki. Supervisor Rose.
The $1.5 million breaks down like this: $250,000 immediately to the Kenosha Area Business Alliance, another $250,000 in 2014 for the High Impact Fund if they need it, so $500,000 in 2014 for the High Impact Fund, and the balance of $1 million for future anticipated contributions from us to that fund.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Decker?
I just have a question on the wording, because on for the wording on the resolution, it states, not to exceed 1.5 million for the public purpose of financing grants to the Kenosha Area Business Alliance revolving loan program. Is that the high impact fund, or is that the revolving loan program?
In 2014, it is supposed to be for the High Impact Fund, which is part of that revolving loan fund.
Okay, just because we've always called it the high impact fund, and now it's being called the revolving loan program.
No, it's
so-
always been called the revolving loan fund. That has been the traditional denomination of the county funds to CABA. This so-called high-impact fund, it was a segregated part of that to underscore the CABA's efforts to get better-paying jobs into this area.
Okay, all right, so it is for the high impact.
Yes,
Thank
it
you.
is.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Skalitsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the chairman of the Finance Committee, so $1 million is going, you're asking to be bonded for an unknown obligation or an unknown use?
Not an unknown use. It's for the Kenosha area. It's for the same fund for the future.
Are we replenishing it, or?
No, we're adding to it.
I'm sorry, I just don't know. Is there a current balance on that fund?
I'm not that, I can't answer that. I'll refer to that to Mr. Richardson. If they're the current balance, I'm not sure.
Dave?
I understand that the 1.5 million that we've paid into high impact is all either paid or committed at this point, so there's no more money there to commit to any future project.
So there's no balance. This is to replenish now and in the future.
You still have the floor, Supervisor.
Yeah, I
Skalitsky.
know. Has there been any indication from CABA that there is some pending projects or identified uses for $1 million just to sit there, or for us to bond $1 million for something potentially down the road? Doesn't sound very responsible in my eyes.
Well, they don't have anybody on the line for that $1 million, if that's your question. Hopefully, with that money, they will have the money available to attract somebody like an Amazon or some of these other companies that have come here, and some of that money has been used for some of the companies that have announced. And this is to have money available so that they don't have to return to the county requesting additional funding.
Has this been the traditional approach to it in the last few years?
The High Impact Fund is something which was originated, I believe, 2 years ago.
Okay, but we bond, it gets used, we replenish.
Correct.
Without necessarily having a list of projects we're going to do on it.
That is correct.
That's standard practice here.
Yes,
Okay,
that is standard practice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Kohlmeyer?
Just a point of information, I apologize, I know this was brought up in the Finance Administration meeting, but how many years out is this bond going for the CABA? This is multiple years, correct?
It is multiple, yes, but it could be 1 year, 2. Could be 2015. I don't know how many years this $1 million will go. It might last 1 year. $500,000 is committed for 2014. $1 million is for the future. That future may be 2015, depending upon who they attract. Hopefully, they would use all of it in 2015, and there would be additional companies coming here. That would be a positive.
So we're authorizing, I know this question came up too, we're authorizing now money to be spent in 2015. I just want to make sure I fully understand.
It is possible that it would be used in 2015. We're not authorizing it, we're just saying it is available.
Okay.
Supervisor Skalitsky?
I've just had a point of clarification. Have we in the past, or has CABA come in the past and explained specifically where these projects with this high-impact fund have been used?
Yes,
Okay.
they've been
Maybe
very
I missed
attentive
that.
to that, yes.
So
But when the
is that
high-
an annual thing that they do?
They come to us quarterly.
Okay.
And I think they've been very good about keeping us informed. When the High Impact Fund was first originated, there was nobody specifically in mind for it, and it was not used, but now it has been used.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more lights. All right, hold on. Put them on, whoever wants to speak. Supervisor Decker.
I have not heard any reports of CABA coming back to the county board floor. I'm sure they've come back to the committee. I would like the committee, if they could bring a report back to the entire county board floor. May it be verbal or a typed up sheet that
Sure.
says where this money is going. I'd love to see where it's actually going.
All right.
Thank you.
You have that?
I've got made a note of it, and we'll have that to you next
Thank
week.
you.
Or next time.
Supervisor Anita Johnson.
Well, I'm just wondering why we're not concerned about hearing about it before it's spent. An example like the software. If we have oversight of the money, shouldn't we have the chance to approve where they're spending it? I mean, it's quite a chunk of change we're giving them, and I would think if we want oversight that it should include this. I would recommend it goes back to the Finance Committee. I would like to make a motion to send it back to committee.
You're making a motion to send Resolution 65 back to committee. Is there a second? No second.
I'll second it.
It's been seconded to send it back to committee by Supervisor Skalitsky. On the motion to send that resolution back to committee. No, there's a lot of debate going on here. Supervisor Molinaro.
Well, that isn't interesting, to say the least. So there is no agency that Kenosha County is involved in that does the level of reporting to Kenosha County for how those funds are expended like CABA. Nobody does the job that CABA does. And that isn't to suggest that we're not fully informed, that we're not fully aware. They're in front of the Finance Committee quarterly. They're in front of the Executive Committee, I believe, quarterly. Is that right, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
They have made, in fact, presentations to the county board in the past. I thought Mr. Battle was here at the last budget. I know he's been here to talk about the High Impact Fund. Understand how the fund works. They are oftentimes negotiating with a client or a potential business who's looking to move here. Very often, those are highly, highly confidential discussions. And the reason they are so highly confidential is because these are businesses that oftentimes are relocating from another city, another state. They have hundreds of employees at stake. They have the potential risk for work-related issues, sabotage to product, et cetera. Those are all real issues. Not only that, they are battling and pitting one community against the other community. I believe we have the top economic development coordinator in Mr. Battle of anyone in this region and anyone within hundreds of miles of Kenosha County. Understand that this money is bonded over a period of time. It is not bonded immediately. We are allocating the opportunity that should CABA expend the dollars that they have already committed to, right, but have not yet paid out because the company hasn't met the milestones, but the dollars have been encumbered. As soon as all of those, they have other companies, and they're talking to several. They typically do a pretty good job understanding confidentiality issue of telling us at least the types of businesses they're talking to. When the dollars are needed, based on the resolution before you tonight, then and only then will it be bonded, Mr. Gertson. Is that correct? So I understand, where you're going with this. It's, I guess on some level it's interesting, it's, cute, it's whatever you want to say. It's, I get it, thank you, I deserve it, I appreciate it, but you're off point here. And to effectuate a program that has brought hundreds of high-paying jobs, the return on investment here, there is nothing that compares to it. So don't send it back to committee. This has been discussed, vetted so many times. This is a program that has proven itself over and over again. The presentation is made to Kenosha County 8 times a year to multiple committees, and they'll do more if we need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Molinaro. Supervisor Decker.
I'm against referring it to committee. I am perfectly, CABA does not, when I requested information, I don't expect CABA to come speak. I just want a report, verbal or written, nothing like big deal or anything. But we passed this, or invented, I'm going to use that word because we came up with it, this high impact fund with the help of CABA I believe 3 years ago, because I remember it getting approved the first time I was elected. And I remember sitting down with, at the time, the chairman of the Finance Committee, Chairman Clark, and we sat down and went over all the parameters. This isn't something that CABA is just throwing money left and right, if someone comes here. There are specific parameters that these businesses have to obtain to get this money from the high impact fund. It's quite restrictive, and it's beneficial to Kenosha County that these restrictions are on there because it's for good paying jobs, things like that. I am sure that we still have the documentation on what the parameters of this high impact fund are to release the funds to businesses. So if anyone wants to know what those parameters are, I'm sure we can find that. CABA can give us that information readily so we can see how CABA follows our parameters to entice people to come, businesses to come here. So I am perfectly happy with how CABA is handling this. So I'm not going to refer or support referring this back to committee. I thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Decker. Supervisor Elverman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Supervisor Decker and Supervisor Molinaro covered everything I think that needs to be said. This is a fund that I think if you knew nothing about it, you haven't been listening here for the last 3 years, or 2 years, or last year. So if I was sitting here and knew nothing, and I knew little enough to make a motion like that this evening, I would go get my handbook back out on how to be a supervisor. This is something that's been very well reported, and there's certainly no need to question the wise actions of the county board, county executive, finance, Mr. Battle, Mr. Gerson, and everybody that was on the board at the time. It's a proven success, and we want to keep that going. Thank you.
Supervisor Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can understand Supervisor Johnson's request. I think it's a reasonable question, but I'm going to give you the short course. Supervisor Molinaro will give you the long course. This is the short course. When we court for entities to come to Kenosha County, it is like a courtship game. And there's two things that have to happen. It has to be relatively speedy in the terms of acting in an appropriate time manner, and it has to be confidential. We, as a county board, as a committee structure, cannot act necessarily quickly and confidentially. We have an agent that helps us. That's what CABA does. So we should maintain our current relationship and not refer this back to committee. Thank you.
Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Noble.
Well, I was going to touch on the confidentiality of it, but I think that's been hit pretty good. I mean, everybody knows that Amazon.com, up until a day or two before that went to the city council, it was called the Onyx proposal or whatever. Things like that can't be discussed. But the thing I was going to point out is CABA's been around for a long time, and they were our front to attract business, and I think there's $8-9 million that is seed money from the county that has been used over the course of 20 or more years to fund different businesses and attract different businesses from Twin Lakes to the lakefront, and been paid off and then borrowed to another, lent to another company to attract more businesses. So I mean, we've been doing it for over 24 years, and they report quarterly. I've been on the finance committee. They report quarterly as to exactly what loans are out, and it's very, very comprehensive. I think it's a motion that should have never been made, and surprised it got a second, and it probably shouldn't have gotten a second.
Supervisor Sklitsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've certainly heard much worse discussions be seconded on this floor than this one. And my question is just to Supervisor Johnson. Referring it back to committee, what was your intent of making that motion? What would you like to do?
My intent of making that motion was for, honestly, oversight. I've been hearing about oversight of taxpayer dollars tonight. When it came to the forfeiture funds, we demanded oversight of the taxpayer dollars, and those aren't taxpayer dollars. These are taxpayer dollars. And so I was just curious to hear the arguments about why this doesn't need to have oversight.
Agreed.
It actually doesn't. It comes
Okay,
in
let's not debate
afterwards.
back and forth.
Just, I wanted to ask that question, Mr. Chairman. And I concur that with Supervisor Decker, a report would be great. I'm not able to attend the executive committee and the finance committee because I have other obligations. So no, I've not heard, and I was glad that Supervisor Decker brought it up, I've just not heard the summary or the update from CABA. I'm not questioning they're using it wisely or that it's very effective. I'd just like to see some summary of where the results are, that's all, okay? So I won't, even though I seconded, and I'm glad I did because I wanted to hear the debate, I won't support this motion. I don't want it to go back to committee, but I do want to see some kind of report because we're not always able to make it to every committee meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Arrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First thing I would like to speak with my fellow supervisors about is professional courtesy. I think any supervisor on this floor that's been elected by their district to represent their district is entitled to make motions on the floor, and if another fellow supervisor chooses to second that motion, that we should respect it and we should debate it. I think that the extracurricular things that we say on this floor are very disrespectful. I think they're very childish. I think that we need to represent this county the way it deserves to be represented. I've personally never done that on the microphone or to any of you all. But I'm not going to support her motion, but it's apparently what I'm seeing is that it seems like that we pick and choose what we want to do and when we should do it. CABA's outstanding. They are absolutely outstanding. I don't think that was Supervisor Johnson's intent. I think what Supervisor Johnson was trying to throw out there is that we fought tooth and nail over the drug issue of money and monitoring that money, something that we've never done in this county venue since I've been on the board. And then we get to $1,700,000 for public safety software, and we don't know what software they're going to choose. I guess that there's some kind of inside opinion there that they're not going to pick any software. I don't know what they're going to pick. And then we get down here to the $1,500,000 for CABA, and we're all on board. I don't think that her intent is to genuinely send this back to committee. I think what she wanted to do is point out is that you don't hear yourself what you're saying, What you're saying, you don't trust whoever would need to be trusted to pick appropriate software at $1,700,000. So that's why that went back to committee. What you're saying is that you don't trust what's going on with how the drug funds were being handled. See, I'm not going to continue to sit here and watch this melee of this immaturity as we continue to talk about what we need to talk about on this floor. There's no disrespect required to discuss these issues. Let's discuss the issues as adults, like I've stated once before tonight, and get on with the business. CABA does an excellent job for us, but I think what Supervisor Johnson was trying to get us all to see is that, you know, it looks like that we're one way at one moment, and then in the blink of an eye, you know, we have all this great feedback and information about CABA, which honestly, CABA does do a good job. I've looked at some of their stuff here and there. They've done an excellent job for Kenosha County. But these other issues that we've debated, we didn't handle those issues that way. And that's why she wanted to table this. But no, don't send this back to committee. We need to approve this $1,500,000. We should have approved the $1,700,000. Thank you.
Supervisor Rose.
Let me just report that the last $1.5 million, $1 million went to this new company, Kenall, $250,000 to Bradshaw Medical, and $250,000 to this new company called Echo. And those were all reported to the Finance Committee. The rules that govern us, and we've adopted them in the past, provide that CABA reports quarterly to the Finance Committee. If you want to change that, have them report to the entire board, it can be done. They're in full compliance with the board rules. We do have oversight, and the money that we give to CABA are grants with the proviso that they report back to us. We are entrusting them with that money to make the decision with a report back to us. There is oversight. If you want to change those rules and vote on every company that is going to receive money, I'm afraid that you're going to be outbid by other cities and other states. This is a very competitive business. If you read the more recent Time magazine about, they had a cover story on Texas. You should see what Texas is doing as compared to the state of Wisconsin and Kenosha County. So I think your idea here has no merit, frankly. I would urge that you defeat the motion. Let's get on with it.
I have my light on.
Supervisor Montemuro.
I just have one question. Is anyone from the county board on the CABA board? Do we have anybody from our department at all? I think they do a wonderful job. I think they report to us. Some of us don't know all of the companies that they're inviting, and I'm not questioning that. But I'm just wondering, since they're making all these decisions, and basically they can just tap into this money, right? We don't stop them from that. So has that ever been brought up? Has anybody been offered to be on the board? That would be my only question. There is no one, correct?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Terry?
Dave Gersten, I believe, is currently on the board.
Oh, okay, there's my...
Wayne
okay.
Kessel, who is a former member of this board, served on the county board and on the CABA board. There is no provision, as I understand it, that a county board supervisor be a member of the CABA board.
Could do that. Okay.
You still have the floor.
No, I just, if that's an option, I thought that would help, but I'm not criticizing the money. I'm just saying that, you know, they're spending our money, so maybe somebody would want to be interested in being on that board. Thank you.
Supervisor Anita Johnson.
I just want to state for the record that I do follow what CABA does, and I'm a huge advocate of what CABA does. And yes, I fully intend to withdraw my motion. I think I made my point.
You're withdrawing your motion? Okay. You withdraw a second. Okay. All right, that motion has been withdrawn. So now I'm going to clear the lights, and anybody wishing to speak on Resolution 65, you? Okay. Supervisor Hallman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in favor of the resolution, but I want to point out, as I've made perhaps a number of times quite clear on this county board floor with regards to CABA, I'm a lucrative not lucrative, but lukewarm fan. And I say that because many times I have asked, when we bring companies here, and because this is public dollars that are being made in some form of an investment, what are we actually getting? Do we know whether it's folks from Kenosha County that get preferential in terms of hiring? Do we know that there's a certain set of slots necessarily set aside? Do we know what the education requirements are for folks to be able to take those jobs? Do we know how many people of color are hired? Do we know how many women are hired? Those are the kinds of things that I look at. There is a distinct difference between economic development and economic growth. And my concern when we do this is that we may be getting economic development. I see it in the glossy reports that come across my desk and show up in my mailbox and show up in my email inbox. But I question that portion about actual economic growth in terms of our constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Supervisor Rose.
Well, I don't want to, I think I have to answer that because this high-impact fund is aimed at attracting better paying jobs. And while I don't have the rules right in here in front of me, but they are trying to attract jobs of $15 an hour or greater. On this issue of minorities and women, there are state and federal laws that that they have to comply with. Those are incorporated into the rules and regulations that we've adopted. I don't think we've ignored that in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was there when we first created the High Impact Loan Fund. I remember, I went to the Finance Committee and raised these exact concerns. And of course, I was told, as usual, as I have been since I got here, well, we can't tell you that. That hurts businesses. And then someone said, well, can't you get those numbers from the state and the feds? I said, well, sure, but they're not necessarily CABA specific in terms of our investment that we as Kenosha County have made into these corporations. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. A little challenged at this point. Supervisor Molnar.
I was there when Mr. Battle answered this question for Supervisor Hallman multiple times and showed him and assured him that they were collecting as much data as the companies who came in were willing to provide. So it's clear that every time you've brought this question up, when a presentation was made by Mr. Battle or at the time Mr. Rodenbeck to the Finance Committee or others where you were present, that they have assured you through documentation, not just a appropriate answer to the question, that the data is being collected and is being shared. And I would urge everyone in the room, when CABA sends you the quarterly report, I know for a while it was coming through the, I believe with the packet, I think now it comes independent directly from CABA to all the elected officials, rather than wait until budget to debate and argue that there's no accountability, just read the darn report. You get it. We all get it. Read it. And then we wouldn't have to make motions like we make and rescind them, because we realize that if and I get, you know, we're being chastised for picking and choosing. I've been saying that all night. We're picking and choosing tonight like I've never seen before. But you got to pick and choose where it makes sense. If every department, if every issue that came up had the oversight that CABA has with the revolving loan fund and had the success that we have seen through this fund through the decades that it's been in place, we wouldn't be having the conversation. Read the report. You get it. We all get it. And CABA will continue to provide the information that everybody's asking for here tonight, inclusive of the demographics. Thank you.
Okay, no more lights. So we will take a roll call vote on Resolution 65. That passes.
Resolution 66 from Finance Administration Committee regarding...
Did you want to talk on it?
Before we adjourn?
Sure.
Resolution 66 from Finance Administration Committee regarding initial resolution authorizing the issuance general obligation promissory notes in an amount not to exceed $925,000 for 9/11 Public Safety Answering Point Improvement Projects. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. O'Day, yes. Grady, yes. Kohlmeyer, yes. Kubicki, yes. Molinaro, yes.
Supervisor Rose?
I move the resolution number 66.
Resolution 66 been moved by Supervisor Rose, seconded by Supervisor Ron Frederick. Supervisor Rose?
This resolution authorizes the financing of the 9/11 Public Safety Answering Point Improvement Project.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Arrington?
Oh, it's not on this. It's after this.
Okay, we will take a roll call vote on 66. That passes unanimously. Supervisor Arrington, you had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask Corporation Counsel, just for my own FYI, as it pertains to the Resolution 63 that's going back to committee, in the event that something else is written into that will affect the budget, it will just be a resolution. Will we have to reopen the budget to change the changes that could be potentially made to 63?
No.
Okay, thank you.
It's been moved to adjourn by Supervisor Underhill, seconded by Supervisor Decker. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.